Hey, it's Ben Ufana. I'm back for part five of Getting the Love You Deserve. And today we're talking about or effectively um, dealing with conflict. So, conflict is an inevitable part of, of relationships, especially being in a intimate relationship. And how we deal with conflict has, or possibly not dealing with it as well, has a tremendous bearing upon how the relationship plays out, the success of a relationship, or lack thereof. And and so many relationships that could potentially work often are not working so well, and in many instances end up couples separate. They don't stay together because one or both partners are um, not managing conflict and inflicting a lot of damage upon one another. And so I feel it's imperative for all of us to learn how to work more effectively with conflict, being that it's just part of the process. So let's learn to work with it more effectively. The better we're able to address conflicts as they arise, it helps us to deepen our understanding of one another. It enables us to resolve issues, and it actually brings us a lot closer together. So, very important here. And as I've said before, when when we're faced with conflict, oftentimes it's triggering us emotionally. There can be confusion. There could be upset, misunderstanding, and it just creates this fog around us, and or this, we're in this field of all these highly charged emotions, and so we need to um, be able to work constructively with our own uh, cognitive and emotional responses to diffuse much of that highly charged emotion. So, if you're with your partner or you're in the midst of a conflict, if you're interacting with any other person and their words and actions are triggering you emotionally, it is of great benefit to be able to notice what's happening. Notice how it's triggering you emotionally. What specific feelings um, are being evoked? What is it that you are feeling in response to this interaction or the words that are being said or what was done? Um, what do you feel in response to it? Where are those feelings? Where do they reside within your body? Are they in your chest cavity, further down in your abdomen, or just wherever they happen to show up within your body? Um, Immerse your awareness. Feel as though you're centering your awareness in the depths of those feelings and bodily sensations. Breathe very softly, very deeply. Follow the feelings and sensations as they go through their progression. I know I've said this before, I'm going back through it again, but it is such a crucial part of the process of, our life experiences, our um, cognitive and emotional responses. We need to be able to digest that. If we're not able to do so, our all those highly charged emotions, again, if we're in a conflict and we're being triggered, those emotions tend to build up within our bodies. The more those emotions build up within our bodies, it creates more of a buffering, more of a barrier between you and your intimate partner, or between you and whoever you're dealing with at any given time. So, the more you can work through, process through your emotional responses, sort through your thoughts as well, gain that clarity, brings understanding, enables you to resolve conflict, and it has a potential to bringing you closer together. So let's discuss some of the important steps. I'm just going to refer back to my notes here. And so starting out, discuss one issue at a time. I don't know if you've had the experience, you get into it with someone, you have a disagreement, and maybe they've been in your life for some time, but then they hit you with a whole litany of, uh, grievances and accusations and just, what you did l or said last week and, a month ago and 5 or however long you've been many years you've been in their life. It's just one thing after another. And the danger of that is it's more likely to escalate the argument, the disagreement, so that things begin to spiral out of control. If you're on the receiving end of that litany of um, everything you said and did wrong over the course of your relationship, well, what's it going to do? It's going to just create more of a sense of overwhelm and just add to the confusion. Makes it so much difficult to stay on track with the issues that need to be, or maybe specific issue that needs to be addressed. So, to the best of your ability, stay with one issue at a time. It's just, or at least limit it to the best of your ability, so that it's going to make it easier for you to stay focused and resolve the issue that needs to be developed. And as you make some headway with that particular issue, then you could progress along one by one, or maybe just deal with one thing for now and then wait till a bit later to bring up the next thing, next issue or concern. Another thing is refrain from degrading language and personal attacks. If you're um, if your emotions are getting the best of you and you're just you're feeling, if you're consumed by all this anger and frustration, resentment, you're triggered by something your partner said or did. And it could also be, the fact that sometimes our reactions are disproportionate. They may have said or done something, but it's also triggering emotions, impressions, memories, based upon, and you may not be fully conscious or conscious at all of a lot of the charged emotions that are being triggered, because they can link to events or experiences way back in your past, things that happened from previous relationships or from going back to when you were growing up, the whole parent child relationship you had in your family of origin. But in any case, when all these highly charged emotions are, um, you're consumed by them, then it's easy for us to, um, we overreact. And but the unfortunate thing is, a lot of times we end up um, attacking, verbally assaulting, name calling. You fucking asshole. You you're stupid. Things like that. It's not going to help. And once you say things like that, you can't take those words back. It's not just enough to say, "Oh, I'm sorry." I mean, I interact with so many people, and some of the people that I work with even um, are not all that easy. I mean, most are, but you know, some people with histories of trauma, and they could be extraordinarily difficult to deal with, sometimes very reactive, a bit volatile. And with few notable exceptions, I've managed to keep my responses toned down. And even during the midst of the interaction, some of those interactions, if they're difficult with, in my own relationships, romantic or with family members or with people that I've worked with, where things have been highly charged at times, even in the midst of the interactions, I'm slowing down a bit, just being present with what's being said, listening, and I'm breathing with what I'm feeling, my own emotional responses, very softly, very deeply, And what I find happens is that, um, when um, I remember growing up, was that ABC's Wide World of Sports, and they would, you'd see the downhill skiers coming down the slope, and and they would put it in slow motion. I guess other people, it's if they watch football games and they replay certain plays or whatever, and then you could see, just very slowly like how it all unfolded. And so if I'm in the midst of some kind of heated exchange and I start breathing very softly, deeply, whatever feelings, whatever sensations I'm experiencing, it gives me a little more time. It slows down so you're not just immediately reacting to that person or situation. It diffuses that intensity then and there in the moment. The other thing I find too is that, with if you strike, if you have two tuning forks, you strike one and the next one's going to start vibrating. And that phenomenon is referred to as sympathetic resonance. And so, and even more so, if you're doing a lot of intensive meditation practices, I do, and your own field, your own presence gets stronger, as you get into a calmer, more neutral, more peaceful emotional state, you do affect the other person or the other people around you. So it helps as you're de escalating within yourself, it helps to de escalate that other person and de escalate the situation, the intensity there. Another thing, clearly articulate your needs and feelings while taking responsibility for them. So, a good way to do that is start your sentences with I. Or, for instance, if you're saying, I feel a bit hurt and disappointed when you're not responding to my texts or answering my phone calls, or I'm feeling insecure or whatever. Or if another example is that I'm not feeling that you really value the relationship when you're working such long hours. And then when you do have time off, you're spending time on the phone talking with friends, or you're going out with this other person and spending time with them. But what I'd really like and that I feel I need is for us to spend quality time together. So as you do that, you frame it as, in terms of what I would like, what I would like to see happen. It helps to so that your partner doesn't feel so blamed, so it doesn't feel quite so accusatory. Another thing is to take turns talking. So when you disagree with the words coming out of your partner's mouth and it's triggering you emotionally, and it's can be quite difficult sometimes to resist that urge to jump in there and head them off at the pass, to cut them off and say, no, this is the way it is. But it you're doing that, your partner's going to feel that you're not really hearing them, you're not really listening anyway. And if you give them, it is difficult at times. It is for me too, for all of us, but um, best you can, listen, let them speak. May be more difficult if they tend to drone on and on, if they tend to speak in monologues. But aside from that, let them say what they're going to say. Give yourself some time, continue breathing, pause a bit, and come back and say what you need to say, and then listen to what they have to say again. And it helps to tone down some of the intensity, to de escalate. Also, some of you may have this tendency to throw up a wall, to wall yourself off, to just go cold, give the silent treatment. Well, yeah, it can provide you with a momentary escape from the conflict, from the issues that need to be addressed. And maybe in some situations that may be appropriate. I mean, there are some people who just harass you, who just are, they're just on the attack, assaulting you. I've had a few people like that in my life. As much as possible, someone does that, I tend to just throw them out of my life, cut them off. But it's not so easy when it's a family member. We tend to tolerate more with family members than we do with other people. But anyway, um, if you stonewall a person, if you just wall yourself off, cut them off, it just adds to their upset, their frustration, their sense of overwhelm. Maybe you do need some time to communicate, or to sort out what you're feeling. You're not quite sure what you're feeling. And if that is the case, just be honest to say, I need a little more time to process this. If I if I go into it with you right now, I I may say some things that I might not want to say. I may be a bit more reactive. I need some time to process this, but then commit to a time and place to actually communicate. Next one, and this goes back to ties in with what we were talking about before. No name calling, no assaults, no put downs. Is that tone it down? I know some people think that they could intimidate their partners into submission by raising their voice or by increasing their volume, that they're going to make their point heard, but not necessarily. I mean, if anything, it's just going to generate a lot more stress. It's going to make the conflict seem a lot more overwhelming. It's going to escalate. Doesn't help matters. So, toning down the intensity of your volume helps to de-escalate conflicts. When you can calm it down a bit, you're more likely to, it helps the communication flow better. Again, breathe into what you're feeling, even while you're speaking. I wrote out a few more notes that just earlier today, if I can see them. A lot of people tend to be afraid of conflict. But again, it's an inevitable part of relationship. So much of it has to do with how you deal with it all, whether you're working with conflict effectively or not. And the more effectively you can work with conflict, let me back up a bit. The disadvantages: you don't deal with conflict, what's going to happen? You have all these unsettled, conflicted, unresolved emotions that get stirred up. And as that continues to happen, as that emotion continues to build up inside of you, it creates barriers between you and your intimate partner, all those unpleasant, uncomfortable feelings. So anytime that you try to come closer together, you try to communicate, you try to interact, and there's that, again, that barrier of all those highly charged emotions. It's not going to help you or your partner. It just, and as that continues, you know, over time, all that conflict, it kills the intimacy. And that can just be incredibly damaging for your relationship. Oftentimes, relationships do not succeed because it's just the damage that's being done, and it can be hard to repair that damage. Now, again, some people just their style of coping, or avoidance coping in this case, is to just not deal with conflict, ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, hope it will just go away. And okay, maybe if you're in a situation, if you're still living at home with your parents and you have parents that are very narcissistic and abusive, sometimes that may be the coping strategy you use just to survive. But as an adult with your intimate, hopefully intimate partner, that's not a very healthy, productive strategy. If you're avoiding issues, it's still, the fact that, you're having an emotional response, your partner's having an emotional response. You know, you walk into a room, someone's upset or angry without them saying a word, a lot of times you can feel it from them. So emotions have substance. They don't just vanish or go away. They don't cease to exist. When you're triggered emotionally, you continue to hold that within your body. So instead of avoiding conflict to the best of your ability, face it, deal with it, communicate as best you can, assert your needs, communicate what you're feeling as best as you're able to. Um, Another example to mention here is that you have people who um, ha- have quite the tendency to overreact. They can be very explosive. Um, just, it turns into a brutal assault, a confrontation. Oftentimes, we attract people like that into our lives because we're wounded, and our relationships, in many instances, become a reenactment of past wounding, past traumatic experiences. It's, it's important to understand that if you're tending to overreact, to become to escalate to that point to where your interactions are becoming very explosive, it's just showing there's a tremendous amount of healing work to do. It could be in a really toxic relationship with someone who's triggering you, but hey, if you're in a relationship like that, again, there's a lot of work to do. Why are you with that person if it's that difficult? If you can't bring issues to resolution? My cute little doggy here is chewing on something, so I don't know if that's coming through the microphone. Um, you can't do the work for your partner. You could only do your part, but as you further progress in your own healing, you gain clarity and understanding, insight as to whether the relationship is workable, um, whether there can be healing in the relationship, or if not, you also gain that clarity of knowing when it's time to move on. So we've covered a good bit of ground here. Um, that hasn't been that long. That's good. Keeping it a little more brief. But I think that's good for today. So I'll leave you with that. Again, this is part 5. And um, I don't know, could be like 4 or 5 more segments to the series here. We'll see. But um, that's good for today. Bye for now.